Hey, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Welcome to the Jazz Real Book podcast.
Jazz Real Book Podcast.
Yes, sir.
This is a unique name.
Yeah, so what I do is I take a tune from the real book each week and I break it down, talk about a signature artist, and then I have guests on as well.
Huh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's a lot
I
of fun.
remember when the real book came out. Do you know what year it came out?
Somewhere in the 70s, right? Probably when you were around Berkeley area.
Yeah, I was Berkeley. I got there at 72.
Hmm.
And I remember right around then, if it wasn't then, it was right around then that this new book came out and everyone had to buy it. And
Yeah.
it was the real book. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a crazy history. I mean, I remember even when I was at Berkeley, which was years later, like, having to go to the music store and buy it under the counter and like with a cat. It was like a cash.
Right, because it wasn't sanctioned. They hadn't paid the publishing rights
Yeah,
for those songs.
right, right. But it was my understanding, and you probably, since you were around at that time, it was most likely a bunch of Berkeley professors and students who would put it together.
Probably, yeah. Whoever's wrote it, I believe I read something somewhere where they admitted to it, came forward and now it's legal, from what I understand.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I know there's like, I always assumed Steve Swallow had something to do with it because there's like a million of his tunes in the original version, but
Okay, right.
cool. Yeah. Well, anyway, let's talk.
Nice. Interesting. But all right, you have a unique podcast concept there. I like it.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and we've gotten some great guests. George Benson's been on, Esperanza Spalding, Josh Redman, many people and
Great, all great musicians.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, Ron Carter, all the names, which is great. So it's great to have you as a guest. And I know we were going to talk about Jack DeJohnette, who obviously had such a huge impact on jazz, and you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you did this documentary series, which I've seen the first of two of three, and I was
It's
wondering.
two. Yeah, the first two are the third one will come out sometime on the weekend of the 14th, 15th of November.
Okay,
And that's all three,
right, right.
three of them.
So could you talk? So I guess it's a Sonar presents 150th anniversary documentary, right? It has something to do with Sonar specifically. How did it come about?
Yes. Well, I've been endorsing Sonar drums since 1977.
Hmm.
And the only drummer that's actually been endorsing Sonar longer than me was Jack.
Okay.
And he started in 1972. And with the 150th anniversary of Sonar, which got started in 1875, they
Right.
wanted to make a number of videos with their endorsers, playing drum solos or playing to tracks, and they made a number of those, and one of the events they wanted to film was a talk between Jack and myself talking about Sonar drums and our shared experience, of what it's like to be playing drums for basically our entire careers.
Sure.
And so it proved somewhat difficult for the team at Sonar to get in touch with Jack, because one of the things that's happened at Sonar in the last 5 years since COVID, since 2020, pretty much the entire team that had been there for many, many years quit or retired. So,
Okay.
so they hired an entire new crew of very pretty young, from 30s and 40s year old people that have been in the music business, but now, have taken over running Sonar. And I went over there a few years ago and recorded a number of videos at the factory. Um, and they're amazing. So they're a very high level, well educated, very driven, wanting to make an impact young crew. So they came up with this idea, but Jack didn't know any of them. And he wasn't responding to their emails. So they reached out to me. Can you get in touch with Jack
Right, right.
and help facilitate this? Actually, I had a little trouble getting through to Jack as well. So I reached out to his assistant, Craig Santiago. And Craig is someone that I've known over the years. He's helped me as a drum tech when I did some recording in Woodstock. And Craig is Jack's long-term assistant and drum tech. So he
Okay.
hooked it up. And then so I ended up talking to Jack, and he said, I'm retired. I'm not traveling at all anymore. And I'd like to do this. It sounds good, but can you come to me? Can you come up to Woodstock? And I knew of a studio in Rhinebeck called the Clubhouse that I knew was a nice big room.
Mhm.
Uh, and that we could have two drum sets, and the film crew was coming over from Germany to film it. And so he said, yeah, the Clubhouse, that's great. I love that studio. In fact, they have a really great piano. Let's do it. And I want to play some piano that because I love that piano. We'll do some duets. And so we organized it. And he picked the date, which was September 9th, 2024. And his birthday is August 9th. So he had just turned 82 years old. My birthday is
Right.
August 21. I had just turned 70.
Okay.
And so,
I'm
you know,
fine.
so so we got together and 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 it was a very interesting day. At first he wanted to play one of his compositions, but he forgot to bring the music. He couldn't really remember the whole thing. So then, all right, let's just move on. Um, and he came up with time after time and Mr. PC, like, let's do that. So that was kind of planned ahead. And but the first thing we did was set up his drum set, and he played for about an hour by himself and just recorded like some solo pieces, which you see
Mhm.
interspersed within the videos as he's demonstrating him, just playing,
Yeah.
basically improvising. And then we set up my kit, and then we played some duets. And I had a couple of ideas of what to do for duets, and then he just spontaneously started playing like the beginning of number volume two.
Mhm.
That's as Jack started this groove with the intention, okay, now you play over this, so and then it ends with another thing. He just came up with playing just some medium tempo swing, and we played together. So we did that. Then, we changed the set so he could play piano and drums. So we did that rearranging, and then we did played those two pieces. And then at that point, they rearranged the studio, and we sat down and talked.
Yeah, yeah.
And so our talk was an hour. It was kind of like exactly an hour from beginning to end. And then once it was all filmed, it sat for a while because Sonar had a lot of other videos. Like the next day, and then I stayed and I recorded like 5 pieces myself after Jack left. So after that, Jack left, and then I recorded like when you see me playing drums and doing the conic hole with it.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
then so I did some tracks, vital information tracks that I played along to. I played some solo pieces. And then the next day and next 2 days, other Sonar drummers came there from Canada, from Nashville, and they recorded a bunch of stuff. So since the film crew was there and it's a nice studio, they took advantage of it and did 3 days of filming. So there was a lot of work to get all of those videos edited and distributed over the year. And then we had the idea with the interview with Jack that since November is National Drum Month, and there's the PASIC convention, Percussive Art Society, that we'd put the interview out in November. And then uh, basically as it and the idea that it was 3 parts came from Sonar because it was so long. If we did this idea of editing in some playing examples and
Mhm.
some videos from uh, other periods of Jack's career, it was going to be, who knows, like 2 hours,
Sure.
a little too long.
Right,
So
right.
they said, let's divide it into 3 parts. So then, I did my best to guide the editing of it. So, each part tells a story and has some nice playing from what we did there in Rhinebeck, New York. And then also I worked on getting permission to use footage from other sources,
Mm,
his homespun video, some Hudson Music footage. And
sure.
so it took a long time to get it all organized. And then when they put out the first part, unfortunately, that's right when Jack passed the next day. So the timing was kind of strange to say the least. Uh, but um, I think we're fortunate that we have this footage and this documentation of him.
I
It
totally
was
agree.
essentially like about 13 months before he passed, just a little over a year.
All right. So was his health? Was he struggling with health at that time, or he was in good spirits and everything?
He was in good spirits. I definitely think his health he was diminishing. He had some health problems,
Sure.
though, and we talked about it somewhat, but not in any kind of great detail.
Right.
And he was just up for playing. He hadn't been playing. He talks about that a little in part three. He hadn't really been playing because he was retired and just kind of taking it easy and spending time
Yeah.
relaxing with his wife Lydia.
I
And
mean, the chops were still there,
yeah, I mean, he's still the one and only Jack DeJohnette,
Yeah.
and it was a thrill for me to have that opportunity to sit and talk to him like that and to play with him.
Yeah, yeah. And I like how, like, in the beginning, like, the two of you were kind of geeking out over the history of Sonar drums and the different kinds of sets. And it's exactly like I hear whenever I see
Yep.
two drummers sit down. It's like it's the same conversation. I know, bass players and guitarists are like, I don't know. It's funny to,
But that's why Soner put us together
yeah,
because they wanted us to talk through,
sure,
in a way you could say in our 50 years. Like Sonar had been around about 100 years. They
right.
they celebrated their centennial in 1975, which is like Jack started in 72, I started in 77. So now this we were there for the third 50-year
Right.
history of, and they wanted us to talk about that, which we did, and I'm glad that we did because I dig the drums a lot, and he did too, and so it was, it's what we talk about a lot when drummers get together, especially if you both play sonar, you go through that.
Right, right. Yeah, it's kind of it's cool. I mean, I learned a lot, like I always hear drummers talking about their shells and this amount of ply and the babinga wood, and it was just kind of cool to hear two masters sort of do the same thing that everyone does.
Exactly.
Yeah, but obviously they make a great product. I distributed them for a little while in a music school and store, and we had the drums, and they're built like I never had a problem with them. Anytime I sold one, I knew
Yeah.
I knew I was in good shape.
Good,
Yeah.
good.
That's cool. So how did you like first become, because obviously Jack's a little bit older. How did you first become aware of his playing? When did you first hear him?
Yeah, the first time, I don't remember what album it was exactly, but it was once I went to Berkeley.
Okay.
So I went to Berkeley. I graduated high school in 1972, June 1972, and September 72 went to Berkeley, and I had a lot of jazz influence up until that time, but it was more or less like big band jazz influence.
Sure.
Buddy Rich, Louis Bellson,
Mhm.
and 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 I had seen pretty much all of the big bands, and I knew about Max Roach
Sure.
mainly because Max did an album with Buddy Rich called Rich versus Roach, which
Mhm.
is an
Cool.
incredible album if you've never heard that. But it's, those two guys going at each other. But I was a super fan of those drummers, and then of course growing up in the '60s, listening to Mitch Mitchell with Hendrix and
Mhm.
Ginger Baker with Cream, and so I had this, kind of mix of the jazz side and the early rock side, And then when I went to Berkeley, that's when I was exposed to Miles Davis and John Coltrane, Tony Williams, Elvin Jones, and then Jack DeJohnette
Right.
playing with Miles, like the Bitches Brew album and Live Evil on the corner, and then like right into his ECM work. I
Mm,
think, John Abercrombie's Timeless. I mentioned the Infinite Search, which was called Mountain in the Clouds when it came out, the Miroslav Vitu's
yeah,
first album.
I remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, with Jack and Chick and John McLaughlin. That such a powerful album. And then he made a lot of great records after that too. Like there was a Chet Baker record I remember. I think it's called She Was Too Good for Me. And its side one was Steve Gadd, side two was Jack DeJohnette.
Okay. Two
You know,
slaps.
so I was buying all these albums and just, be kind of blown away by his playing.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's how I started to really listen to him and then learn about Sonar drums because then I knew he played Sonar drums.
Okay. So that had something to do with your interest in the
It did. Yeah. The main two drummers that I listened to that I knew were Stoner endorsers were Jack and Bernard Purdy. At
oh,
that time, Bernard was playing Stoner drums, and I knew he played on the Aretha Franklin album, like the one with uh, Rocksteady, and then the King Curtis live album, and all that was on Sonar drums. He had a drum kit with a little 18-inch bass drum. Took the bottom heads off the toms, and then I saw Bernard. I think it was '74 doing
mhm.
a clinic at EU Wurlitzer's in Boston, and he
Okay.
played Sonar drums, and they sounded amazing. So when it was time for me to buy a new kit, that's when I went in that direction.
Yeah, he lives like 10 minutes from here.
Oh, really?
Bernard, yeah. Uh, that's pretty cool. So, when did you like first get to meet or know Jack DeJohnette?
I don't remember the year, but it was at a NAMM show out in LA
Okay.
because we were both at the Sonar booth.
Mhm.
But it was probably in the early 80s. Like while I was playing with Journey, like I played with Journey from September 78th through like July 1985,
Mm,
7-year period. And so it was in the early part of that time that I met Jack and just was completely a fan, total fan and
right, right.
geeked out to meet him. And then over the years, like we intersected a number of times, whether it was playing festivals together or me going to see him at a
Mm,
gig or a drum clinic. And then just, we got in touch over the phone and developed a relationship over the years.
yeah, totally. I mean, the catalog, his catalog is so vast, as is yours. But he has such a distinctive musical personality from behind the kit.
Yes.
And it's such a unique way of presenting a swing feel, like especially when I'm listening to the stuff with Jared and
Yeah.
and things he did with Dave Holland and such. Could you kind of explain what made him so unique as a drummer and so special?
Well, that's people have been trying to figure that out for the last 50 years. Um, and he's really indecipherable in a way, because his playing is so singular and so very unique. And so some traits, some things that I can say that I hear, for instance, his ride cymbal playing is beautiful as far as like a beautiful touch
Yeah,
and a nice forward motion without any kind of rushing whatsoever, but a beautiful forward motion and very connected to his bass drum. So that's in some ways that's kind of unusual because of the way a lot of drummers play time. They play time off of their ride cymbal using the spang-a-lang pattern on the ride cymbal and then playing some figures with the bass drum and the snare drum
yeah,
uh, without interrupting that ride cymbal flow. And Jack really doesn't do that in, in a consistent kind of way. His bass drum and right hand were very connected. And then the left hand, kind of a, you could say yin yang, where this, back and forth kind of melodic conversation between the left hand, the bass drum, and the ride cymbal. And
Right.
then intermixed in there is the hi-hat, which sometimes would play 2 and 4, but other times would be part of that mix of how he's playing the cymbal and the bass drum. And then I brought up in that part too about the book that he wrote with Charlie Perry, and the drum book that he wrote does outline some of the kind of phrasing ideas that in a way decodes what drummers do when they play a varied ride cymbal beat, when they don't play spang spang
Yeah.
alang the entire time, the way, say, uh, uh, drummers from an earlier, like Philly Joe Jones would be, or Max Roach would be maybe from an earlier time in jazz drumming development where they were more consistent with the right hand, or Art Taylor, and then their figures were played, underneath that ride cymbal. Where in that book, I like how it's explained that he's implying phrases of three in the 4/4 time, various phrases of three, and then you need phrases of two to sort of, bring it back, bring it around to the one. And
Right.
that's very clearly like what you hear Elvin Jones doing with John Coltrane. He's implying, 3/4, and
Mhm.
Tony Williams during his years with Miles Davis. Uh, and so I think that definitely, in a analytical way, Jack was playing a lot of like polyrhythmic, meaning just breaking up in 4/4, playing like in three or even five over that, or whatever, however it would, you could analyze it. But I don't think he was thinking like that per se.
Yeah.
He was just hearing the phrases over the pulse.
Right.
Because I did talk to him about that just in other times. We talked about those kind of ideas and how he was hearing the phrases over the pulse with different resolution points. And the
Mhm.
resolution point wouldn't necessarily be one. It could be anywhere, you know, where he would hear it that made sense to him, which required the people that he was playing with to be very self-contained,
That's yeah.
not thrown off, to know exactly where they were
Mhm.
in the piece of music and in the time. So, and when you ask other features, I think, of his playing is that he played a drum set that retained the aesthetic of a small jazz drum set, meaning especially the 18-inch bass drum.
Yeah.
Whereas other drummers from his generation started playing 24-inch bass drums or 22-inch bass drums, which takes up a lot more sonic space, but also the weight of those kind of bass drums uh, tends to, it can inhibit forward motion in a straight ahead kind of situation, where the 18 stayed buoyant and fluid, and sort of mixed in with the rest of his drum tuning, which tended to be very high. Like
Yeah.
I mentioned at one time where I loaned him my drum set when he played at Yoshi's Jazz Club in Oakland, California, and he was playing with Herbie Hancock and Dave Holland. And when he tuned my drum set, it was just completely him, but very different from the way I have it tuned, which was lower, because I was playing mainly jazz fusion, more rock fusion, and his tuning is much higher, which suited him perfectly. And then another factor is that his cymbals were very dry,
Yeah.
not a lot of sustain, so he could play, pretty complex cymbal rhythms, but they never really built up, and there wasn't a wash, a cymbal wash.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. You touched upon a lot of things. I forget what I think it might have been Mark Johnson, but I had a bass player on who would play with Jack. at something, and he said, you know, at first, the first tune, he felt a little uneasy because he didn't really know what to do. Like he tried to go with him on his, and then he said, "Yeah, I realized that by the second song, it felt like the greatest thing ever." Like he realized, don't try to do what Jack's doing, like because he's so independent, but yet it's still swinging. It's like a fascinating way of
Right.
playing. Uh,
Independent swinging, like creating his own, he's his own instrumentalist in the mix of a trio or whatever the size of the group is, but he's creating a part, but you have to, as the bass player in the key, play your part. But that
right,
makes sense for Mark Johnson to say that. Yeah, you can't really go with it. And when you listen to Dave Holland especially play with
yeah,
Jack, Dave is just so strong and remains strong and does his thing in a way independent of what Jack is doing. Of course,
yeah,
aware of it and listening to it, but
right.
staying in his own lane.
Although it seems like Gary Peacock had a specific way of kind of doing a little bit
Yeah.
of both, which was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
came just from years of, playing with someone.
Right. And that trio, I love, absolutely love that trio. And those trio albums I've listened to hundreds of times, especially the first two. Because the first two came out, uh, volume one, volume two, standards, volume one, volume two. They were a studio album. And I think they came out in 1983, which I was like right in the middle of touring with Journey. And I had the cassettes and I just listened to them over and over and over again. Just loved them.
That's really cool. So like similar to you in some ways, not that he played with a band, a stadium band quite like Journey, but the stuff with Miles, even Charles Lloyd was like a crossover star in his own way. I mean, could you talk about just how he could still remain versatile across different genres, but still retain his own sort of musical personality?
Oh, I think people hired him for his personal personality.
Good point. Yeah.
And and he was very fortunate in that. And and he didn't, to my knowledge, he didn't do things like, say, for instance, Steve Gadd, who is a fantastic jazz drummer
Mhm.
and has been hired to play on many jazz albums, but he also is a great like pop rock drummer.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. He didn't
and
cross over in that way.
yeah, but Steve always sounds like himself, whether it's Ricky Lee Jones or Paul Simon or Steely Dan or Chick Corea. And uh so I don't, with Jack, there was a certain range of artists that hired him.
Mm.
And I think, and from my perspective, and they were tended to be more in the jazz world.
Yeah.
And so they wanted him to play himself.
Mm. Yeah, and it seems like he had strong musical convictions in terms of like, I think I read somewhere, Charles Lloyd, he felt it had run its course, even though he was doing well with the band and, made the probably what was a difficult decision to move on to do something else.
Yes.
Yeah, which is admirable.
And now that, yeah, we're hearing, I mean, for me, I'm hearing more recordings of him from the time that he was playing with Charles Lloyd and before he played with Miles. I'm pretty struck with how fully formed he was,
Yeah.
even in those years. Especially now, I'm hearing this uh, Force of Nature album with McCoy Tyner and
Mm.
um, Joe Henderson
Yeah, yeah.
that he found. Like he found the tapes in his attic, I think.
Right. I haven't heard that yet. I got to check that.
It's unbelievable. It's ferocious. It's pretty ridiculous. I think
Yeah.
the first tune's about 26 minutes long.
Mm. Okay. I'll, you got to set aside some time for that. But
Yeah,
that's
but
cool.
you won't regret it.
No, I'm sure I won't. Yeah. So could you talk about like how his piano playing, that was some of my favorite moments when he's playing piano. The duo stuff, all the duo stuff was really cool. Um, how did you think his piano playing kind of filtered into his drumming, or did it?
That's one of these questions that I don't know the answer to, of course. And I don't know if he even knew the answer to it, but it had to have an impact because one of the things he points out, and while we were talking, is when you play and more when you play more than one instrument, you can get a perspective of it from a different vantage point.
Mm,
So as a drummer, he could understand what the piano player's needs were because as a piano player, he would play with drummers, and just having that experience would sensitize you as a musician as to how best to complement the other players.
yeah.
So I would say it because he does talk about that in the part two, how he started as a first bass player. He said then he was playing piano, but then he added drums and and then finally spent time with the drum set that the drummer in his band left in the basement.
Okay. It's funny
And
how.
and so that was interesting to me that that's how he developed a lot of his vocabulary. So I don't think it was necessarily from studying. It was from listening to records, hearing people on gigs, and then just experimenting
Yeah.
on a drum set. But I think the fact that he had his ability as a pianist would just give him a unique perspective as a drummer, and especially as a drummer starting out.
Yeah.
You might like I played drums, started on drums and played drums, from the age of 9 years old, fourth grade, and studied drums in somewhat of a typical way of someone from that generation, learning how to read music, learning how to play drum set coordination with jazz,
Mhm.
not like learning rock beats or anything, like learning jazz coordination uh, as the first method of how to play the drum set is to play jazz. And then I studied piano when I was in high school because I knew that I was going to go to Berkeley and I knew that I
Right.
needed some piano technique, which I never, I developed the ability at least to be able to like slowly play tunes and, and work on harmony. But that's what I'm saying. That's a really different approach than if I really played the piano and then
Right. Right.
started to play the drums. That would be a unique uh, way of playing the drums.
Yeah, but it's so cool. Like even when I was kind of had slept on his piano playing and until preparing for this, and then seeing the doc, and then like his drum, you could hear a direct connection. I mean, he is who he is. He's a person and he's a musical personality. But there's that fluidity in time, but it's still in time, and it sounds so specific to just him. I don't know how to
Yeah.
explain. It's so cool.
There's an album called the Jack DeJohnette Piano Album,
Hmm.
and it's on, I think well, Orrin Keepnew produced it. And I have the LP, but I can't remember if it's on Milestones or what label it's on, but it's very good. And he does play time after time on that. He plays Countdown super fast. I think
Really,
Freddie Waits plays drums on it, and Eddie Gomez plays bass.
I love Eddie Gomez. Yeah, that's cool.
So you could, yeah, look that up. But that's an album that he really showcases. He only plays piano on the entire album.
Mm. Right. So you did that whole thing. That was just one afternoon, that whole filming.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, it was like it started around 11, getting there and setting up, and he probably left about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's why you can see like in the window in the back of the studio, it's daylight.
yeah, yeah.
But when I play in that piece in part one where I'm doing the conical, it's completely dark out. By the time I did that, it was like 9 o'clock at night or something. It was a very long day.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that part. And all of a sudden your face pops up while you're doing the vocalizations, and it's really cool how that
Yeah,
happens.
like that's a piece, that's like a drum set conical and drum set solo piece. And it's the conical is fixed, but the drumming is improvised. and then I'll go to a section to do the chronicle, and then that's a composition. So I can just then I played through it once, and then I went back and did the chronicle once, and then doubled the chronicle because it sounds better when it's doubled. So I did two passes of the vocal, uh, and knowing exactly what it was that I did on the drums.
Yeah, that's great. And I know on the newest Vital Information album, you do that as well. I
Yeah,
think two pieces are, yeah, I definitely want to talk about that. But just to kind of wrap things up about with
yeah.
so in terms of like his person, what could you tell us about him as a person? How did you think of him? What was he
Sure.
like?
I mean, one of the first qualities that I noticed is he was very approachable.
Hmm.
And I say that because I've met a few of my other drum heroes who weren't necessarily that approachable.
I can
And
only imagine one of the ones that you're talking
yeah, and a lot and a little harder to talk with. But Jack was very open from the very beginning. No barrier of I don't want to talk to you. He was just like super open. And I saw that quality in him with all kinds of people interacting with him. So that's a beautiful attribute. And again, it all relates to music, I think, too. Like he was uh, very open musically and wanting to explore all kinds of different types of music. And so as a person, he was just a very quality, high level gentleman, and we always had fun hanging out and talking
Yeah.
about whatever we talked about. I do have we didn't talk about all of our times that we met because there was quite a few over the years, but I'm right here we're in Manhattan, New York City. And then I also have a place in Oregon,
Oh,
uh,
okay.
Ashland, Oregon. And I heard Jack was coming to Eugene, Oregon to play with a trio with Stanley Clark and Chick Corea. And so Eugene's out, and it's like a 3 hour drive from Ashland. So my wife Diane and I went up, and we spent the entire day hanging out with Jack
Mm.
and Chick and Stanley, and they were all great. Like we just had a really great time, and we had dinner together backstage, and just had a very nice experience, and talking about everything from family to what supplements you're taking. And because I remember Jack had like this whole like pill box of, I don't think it
Okay.
was medication, it was more like vitamins and supplements. and
Yeah.
and so that was nice. It's like I could hang out with him with my wife too, and it would be super fun, not just two musicians hanging out.
Sure. Yeah.
So
I can.
that's like a So I have nothing but lovely, fond memories of time with him. I mean, there was
That's
another time. It's got like, and this relates to Sonar in a way. Is Jojo Mayer, the great drummer Jojo Mayer? He came up with a bass drum pedal, a Sonar bass drum. Well, a bass drum pedal, and it's called the Perfect Balance. It's a really nice bass drum pedal, and then it can fold up and go into a case and a
okay.
carry case, and you put it on your back and you can carry it to the gig. I was in the San Francisco airport one day walking, and I see somebody walk. I just could see in the distance, a Jojo Mayer uh, bass drum pedal in the case, and I like hurried up to see who it was, and it was Jack, and he had that
Uh-huh.
bass drum pedal, and he was on the way to Japan to play with Keith. But so then there was just this chance encounter in an airport. It's like, hey, what are you doing? Where are you going? It
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
just kind of fun, and I wouldn't have even, because he was off in the distance, I wouldn't have even noticed him. But wasn't for that bass drum pedal he had on his shoulder.
That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, there's, and like what you said, like in terms of meeting sometimes your musical heroes. I've been very fortunate doing this, and I get to talk to people like yourself, and uh, for the most part, all very kind, and all very
Yes,
approachable.
I find that more the case,
Yes.
more often the case. Yes.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Stanley Clark was on the show. I can only imagine what a conversation, because he seems very fun. He was very funny,
Yeah.
Stanley. So to think of you and Stanley and Jack together, it must that must have been a fun
It
conversation.
was good. Yeah, and I had toured with Stanley in 1988.
Right.
There was a band, like an all-star band that we toured the US for, it was a weekend gig. It was kind of a cool gig. We'd fly out and do Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then come home. And we did it over the course of a long time with Stanley, Alan Holdsworth, and uh, and Randy Brecker.
Good band.
It
Yeah.
was fun. So yeah, so it was good. And Chick, I never played with Chick, unfortunately, never got to play with him, but did hang with him a number of times. And once again, a super nice person, just
Yeah.
very, very cool and very open and approachable.
Cool. Yeah. So, I mean, what else do we need to know about? I mean, there's so much to know, but what else should people know about Jack DeJohnette? Or even another question, if you want to get into Jack DeJohnette's drumming and you haven't heard it yet, because a lot of the people listening are new
Huh.
to jazz, where should they look? What albums would you suggest?
Well, I started with uh, John Abercrombie Timeless.
That's cool.
That one just blew my mind. And what one of the things like things that I heard on that record is the very first tune is incredibly fast. It's like super fast up tempo swing.
Hmm.
And the way Jack played that swing was, to my ear, unique and a completely different way of playing incredibly fast time. Whereas I would call an an earlier way of playing super fast time is the way, say, Jake Hanna played with Woody Herman's band, and they'd play Caledonia.
Oh, wow. That's
You,
a, yeah. Okay.
and it was like Caledonia, Caledonia,
Yeah.
like super fast,
Right.
pretty much like staying locked into the jazz ride cymbal beat,
Hmm.
which requires unbelievable technique and endurance, because those tunes were long, a lot of solos were happening.
Right.
Uh, but it was like it, and then there was the way Tony Williams played up tempo with Miles Davis, especially the album Four and More. Now that's moving into like breaking up the ride beat,
Right.
with phrases of threes and twos in there. And then the next level of that is the way Jack played the first tune on Timeless, which then it's like incorporates everything we just talked about with bass drum, hi-hat, snare drum, ride cymbal, and
Hmm.
a completely new way of playing that up-tempo jazz, which I think now is more of a modern way of playing it versus the, say, more traditional way of playing it without breaking up the ride cymbal so
Yeah.
much. So that was a revelation to me, and I really worked on being able to play something like that. You know, so that I found that was a great starting point for me. The first two Keith Jarrett Trio, the Standards records, Volume One, Volume Two, are also phenomenal. And some of the great qualities that you'll hear on those is the as the band plays the tunes, in a way, they erase all the bar lines. They're
Hmm.
playing the form of the song, yet it's so abstracted in a beautiful way that you don't hear the typical markers that says here's the head, there's the top, here's the bridge. It's very flowing and fluid, which requires a great uh, amount of the musicians integrate the songs themselves, like the form of the songs, and then just play freely through it.
Right.
So those albums were highly influential to me. 8081 by Pat Metheny that is a fantastic showcase for Jack.
Mhm.
And the first Michael Brecker's solo album, just simply called Michael Brecker,
Yeah, yeah,
another amazing showcase for Jack. And then it goes on and on. There's so many. And
right.
he brings up in part three a really great example of how a group can play the same music every night and play it different every night is the complete cellar door sessions. So
Mm,
it's Miles Davis's group
right.
with Keith Jarrett on keyboards and Michael Henderson on bass and Jack on drums, and some tracks Ayerto plays on, and on the fourth disc, John McLaughlin plays on some of it. But they play basically the same music for 4 nights, and it looks like 3 sets a night.
Okay.
And then you hear, you can hear that same music played 4 different times and different every single time,
Yeah.
and smoking and killing every time.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean that stuff he was doing with Miles was so unique. I think he talks
Yeah,
about it in the Miles documentary how it's, they were really just discovering almost on the gigs and
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's so
And
cool.
there wasn't, like, he and I talked about this in part three, is it wasn't a lot of boundaries. There wasn't like these heavy boundaries
Right.
between genres in those years, because most of the rock drummers of the time had played jazz before they played rock, and you can hear that
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
playing of Mitch Mitchell or John Bonham or
Hmm.
Ginger Baker, or they had played a lot of swing and a lot of shuffles, a lot of blues. And then it was natural for the jazz drummers, especially for the younger jazz drummers who were of the same age as, say, the members of the Beatles and the Stones, like Jack himself and Tony Williams and Billy Cobham. They were all peers in those years. And so it would be easy in my mind uh, for them to want to play rock too. Why not?
Yeah.
Or listen to Sly and the Family Stone, as, like, I've read that too. Like Miles would drive Jack around in his Ferrari and play Sly and the Family Stone, and not really say exactly what he wanted, but I like one of the quotes was Jack said, "So you want me to play, or like Buddy Miles playing with Hendrix?
Right, right. Yeah.
You want me to play like with Buddy Miles, but use my technique?" And Miles basically said, "Yeah." And that's a lot of what you hear on the complete Celador.
Yeah. Did you ever have an experience with Miles? Did you ever work with him?
I never did. No, unfortunately, that would have been awesome, but no.
Everyone I know, Marcus Miller was talking about him. I mean,
Yeah,
he had told a great story how Miles would get clothes and he'd have Marcus like model the clothes for Miles, and he said, "Oh, I don't, that one doesn't work for me. You keep it, Marcus." And Marcus was like, "All right, I'll keep
nice.
these behind the scenes things." But yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
just the musical, the gift of him being able to see a personality like a Jack DeJohnette or any of the dozens of people he helped to introduce to the greater uh, musical community, and just know he wanted that personality, not even necessarily knowing what he wanted to do with them, but allowing them to develop through the Miles Davis sort of
yeah, yeah.
spectrum. So cool, great.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, great band leader. Great band leader that he cast the band, good casting, and
yeah.
then allow them to develop.
That's a
Yeah,
good way to put it. Yeah.
yeah,
Great. So I think we talked a good amount of
yeah.
Jack DeJohnette. I think for those of you who are not familiar, obviously it's a vast catalog, but many of the albums that Steve mentioned would be the same, similar to what I would suggest as well. I was interested to listen to some of his later stuff, and I was surprised. There was a '90s album. I can't remember the name right now, but he was really into the more fusiony stuff that was almost Vital Information-esque in a way. I forget the
With
name.
with his own band, are you talking
Yeah,
about with his own group?
with
Yeah.
his own group.
And he loved playing reggae. Like he really excelled at playing kind of a jazz interpretation of reggae, and he did do that on a
On the
number
piano.
of his solo records.
Yeah, yeah.
And he had a lot of fantastic bands himself, like really great groups, various groups under his own name.
Yeah, cool.